Good evening, ladies, or good afternoon, like we say, depending on which hemisphere you're in. So let's go into Parshas Vayetzei. Every word of Torah is Nevuah Shehutzrach Aladoros, is Nevuah Moshe Rabbeinu, which is needed for every single generation. In fact, every Navi, as we know, we had 1,200,000 Nevi'im and Nevios in our history, but only 48 Nevi'im and 7 Nevios were written down, because if it was needed, if their Nevuah was needed just for that generation and not for the future generations, it was not written, it was only spoken. But all the Nevuos that were written are needed for every single generation. So, yes, of course, every word of Torah is to teach us life. To teach us about life, first of all, appreciating what it is. God will be Yisrael in our midst. Vayetzei Yaakov mi Beersheva vayovel Charana, vayelech Charana. So Rashi asks, why does it have to say he went out of Beersheva and went to Haran? It could have just said Vayelech Yaakov Harana, that Yaakov went to Haran. Why does it have to say? We would know from that he had to have left Beersheva. But Rashi tells us Yitzias Tzadik Min Hamakom Osaroshem. The leaving of a tzaddik from the place where he is leaves an impression. You feel the lack. When the tzaddik is there, hu hoda, hu ziva, hu hadara, that's Rashi. That is the beauty of the place. And Yatza, when he goes out, pana ziva, pana hoda, pana hadara, the beauty leaves. Good question. Yitzchak and Rivka were still there. So what do you mean? But each tzaddik adds to the beauty of the place. Each tzaddik adds to the kedusha of the place. So of course there was still kedusha because Yitzchak and Rivka were there. But Yaakov Avinu, his kedusha, so it was lacking. It was lacking. The presence of Yaakov Avinu was lacking. Now we see that some questions that one would have. I know the Das Sofrim talks about it. I'm quite sure I also saw it from Rav Gifter in Pirkei Torah, but I did see it in the Das Sofrim explaining what's going on, where it says, Vayar Hashem kisnu aleya v'yiftach es rachma. It says Hashem saw that Leah is snua, hated. That's Shalom, Yaakov. We know that Yaakov loved Leah. How do we know? Because the Torah says, Vayehav gam es Rachel mi Leah. He had more Ava to Rachel, even more than to Leah. Which means, right? Which means that he had Ava to Leah. Even more to Rachel. Yeah. The pasuk says, Vayehav gam es Rachel mi Leah. He had Ava to Rachel also, even more than to Leah. That doesn't mean that she's snua. So what do you mean? It says, so the Medrash tells us when it says Vayar Hashem ki snua Leah, it's not saying Chas v'Shalom that Yaakov Avinu hated Leah. Chas v'Shalom, saying Hashem saw that snuim maasei Esav be'enei Leah. Hashem saw that snua means that she hated the deeds of Esav. She would sit and ask people. She heard that she's being read to Esav, and she asked people, "What is he like?" And they said, and they told her what a rasha he is. So she cried. His deeds were hated in her eyes. And she cried very much. She davened to Hashem that she should not fall into the hands of Esav. And Vayar Hashem kisnu aleya, Hashem saw, the Medrash tells us, he saw that the deeds of Esav are hated in Leah's eyes. Vayiftach es rachma, he opened her ability to have children. She was also an akara. She was also not able to have children. Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah were naturally not, in a natural way, they were not able to have children. But Leah had children right away. Why? because her tears for not falling into the hands of Esav were enough to also make the nace that she should have children right away, even though al pi derech hateva she couldn't. Al pi derech hateva she couldn't. Now, there's also the thing that Yaakov Avinu saw that Rachel is the hashlama to his neshama. She is the completion to his neshama. He saw that Rachel is the one that he's supposed to build Klal Yisrael with. Now Yaakov was Ish Emes. So when he saw that Leah went along with her father in deceiving him, he was concerned. And is she worthy to build Klal Yisrael? So when she had Reuven and she had him right away, she says, Ra Hashem ba'ani, Hashem saw my pain. Okay, so she understands that Yaakov Avinu sees HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave her a child right away, even though she really is not able to. So it must be that she is worthy of building Klal Yisrael. Then the next son, Shama Hashem Kisnu Anochi. So Shama is further than Re'iyah. Seeing is closer than hearing. So Hashem saw from close. She felt the pain more. Then with Shimon, she felt it less. Shama Hashem. Now, when it came to Levi, Hapami Laveh Ishi Eli said, now my husband will be closer to me, because she knew she was a Neviah, and she knew that Yaakov Avinu would have 12 sons and 4 wives, and therefore each wife 3 children. So now that she had her chelek, so she understood that Yaakov Avinu, everything goes with seeing what it is in Shamayim. That Yaakov Avinu would understand that yes, she's worthy. She got her chelek. She got her part. And when she had Yehuda, she said, Hapam Odes Hashem. Now, I have to thank Hashem especially because I got more than my chelek. Now, from Leah Imenu we learn that, and we have to know that the essence of Klal Yisrael is Lahodos LaHashem. Lahodos L'chol Yachedcha. There's a pasuk in Yeshayahu, Am zu yatzarti li lasi yisaperu. This nation that I created, they will tell my praise. Klal Yisrael's very essence is a praise to Hashem. And Klal Yisrael loves to praise Hashem. How do we feel about Nishmas? We all smile when we think of Nishmas, because we feel so good to praise Hashem. And our essence is praise to Hashem. And where did we get that from? We inherited that from Leah Imenu. Her ruach of Hodaya went into us, it went into our DNA. And Klal Yisrael, our essence is to thank Hashem, to praise Hashem. Now, but what happened? Vatamod miledes. She said Hapam Odes Hashem, and then she couldn't have children anymore. She became infertile again. Why? Because teach us, and we should know, that Chazal tell us, Modim al ha'avar umevakshim al ha'asid. We're supposed to thank Hashem for what we already got, and ask Him, and right away ask Him for the future. And we have to understand why, it feels a little bit unpleasant to do that. Maybe it feels like a little bit of a chutzpah to do that. You go to your neighbor, thank you for the bread. Here's the bread back. Could I have some cheese? Thank you for the cheese. Could I have some butter? Thank you for the butter. Could I have some, I don't know, whatever it is. It's much more pleasant just to say thank you and not to keep asking. But with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, He wants us to, because He wants us to have the pleasure of connection to Him. He wants us to have the awareness of our dependence on Him, because that is the pleasure of that will give us the pleasure of connection. So when we thank Hashem for something, it's very easy to relax and forget that we continue to depend on him, even though we already have what we've asked for. And therefore, Chazal HaKadoshim, they knew our psychology. They knew when you thank Hashem for something, don't leave it at that. Ask him. Thank you, Hashem, for the child. Please help. The child should grow up a tzaddik. Whatever it is. Thank you. The apartment that we moved into. Please, Hashem, may we have simchas in the... Whatever it is, thank him and ask. And we learned that from Leah. We learn the thank you from Leah. And we also learn that after we thank, we also need to ask Hashem. Because she thanked, she didn't ask. She wanted more children, she didn't ask. And so, Batamad Miledes, she wasn't able to give birth. But then, she turned over worlds. Yeah, she brought Zilpah to Yaakov, and then she had Yisachar and Zvulun. She did. But that didn't come so naturally. None of it came naturally, but there was a stop because she didn't ask after she thanked. That's a very big yesod that we need to know. Cloud, Rabbi Victor Miller once gave us a gift. At the end of a whole series of lectures, a whole series of classes, he said he's giving us a gift, a piece of advice. And that piece of advice we should all take and we should give it over. And that is, L'olam yispal adam kodem sheyechle, she'im chala, omrim lo havei zechus v'yipater. A person should always daven before trouble, before he gets sick. When things are going well, we should ask Hashem, not only when things are not going well. And the way Rabbi Avigdor Miller said, go into a corner of your house every day, thank Hashem for your health until now, and say, Hashem, please keep me healthy. Okay, now let's look at the end of the parsha. By the end of the parsha, there's an interesting conversation between Yaakov and Rachel and Leah. He takes Rachel and Leah to the field, out to the field, and he wants to tell them something. Oh, wait, I know, I forgot something. Yeah, we see a very interesting thing, that we know that Rachel Imenu gave over the Simonim to Leah. Her sister should not be embarrassed. She did not know. She thought she was giving everything up. She did not know that a week later Yaakov would also marry her. He married her a week later and then worked for 7 years after that. Even Lavan trusted Yaakov. Yaakov was so earnest that even Lavan trusted him that he would work those 7 years after he got Rachel. Now, so how come when Reuven wanted to bring the Dudaim to Leah, you know, those plants that are good for, it seems like it's good for childbirth, it's good for fertility, and Leah and Rachel asked Leah for it, and Leah said, "Hama'at kachteches ishi, is it not enough that you took my husband? V'lokachas gam es dudaei b'ni, and also to take the dudaim of my son." Somewhat. So I saw him, also that story when he talks about that, you see that there was open communication between them. They loved each other, the sisters. There was open communication between them. She's saying, like, not in a strict way, but she's asking her, took my husband, now you want to do dudaim of my son also? What do you mean, you took my husband? Who took whose husband? Rachel Imenu gave her the simanim. But Rachel did it with such chachma. Her chesed was so complete that Leah did not understand what Rachel had done. Rachel did not want her to understand it. So I don't know how exactly it went, but this is what the Mefarshim tell us, that Rachel did the chesed in such a way that she made sure that Leah didn't chap what she was doing. Didn't chap that she was actually giving everything up. So that's how she was able to say, you took my husband. The godless of the chesed of Rachel Imenu that went all the way. all the way without the person even feeling any kind of unpleasant feeling. Okay, now the end of the parsha. End of the parsha, we see that Yaakov Avinu, he hears the children of Lavan talking. Yaakov became very rich, as we know. Hashem made big nisim with him. All his sheep and goats, and they all were striped and spotted, and he was, all these agreements that he had with Lavan, it all worked in his favor completely. And he became very, very wealthy. And by the way, Lavan had bracha in his house because of Yaakov, and he knew it. He said, "Don't leave me. I berachani Hashem beglocha." He said, "I know that Hashem has blessed me because of you." He didn't want Yaakov to leave. He knows that Hashem blessed him. He became wealthy. He had a son. Before that, he didn't have son. He had sons. Before that, he didn't have sons. So he said, "I know it's all because of you." So he knows. So he benefited from Yaakov Avinu, and Yaakov Avinu also benefited. But as soon as Yaakov Avinu also benefited, Vayishma divrei bnei Lavan leimor, Yaakov Avinu, this is Perek Lamed Aleph Pasuk Aleph, Yaakov Avinu heard the words of he overheard the sons of Lavan talking. Listen to this. Chutzpah. Lokach Yaakov es kol asher lo-avinu. Yaakov took everything that belongs to our father. Ume asher lo-avinu asa es kol hakavod hazeh. From what belongs to our father, he has all this honor and all this wealth. Even Lavan admitted that all of his wealth and all the brachas that he has, it's because of Yaakov. But now that Yaakov also has it, oh no, he doesn't forgive him. It says that Yaakov in the house of Lavan was the Poal Dimyon, it was demonstrating on a miniature level Bnei Yisrael and Galus. And it was giving us the strength, because whatever happened to the Avos, that's something that goes into the children, and it goes forward for our sake, for future generations, which means that Yaakov Avinu's sojourn in Lavan's estate, in Lavan's house, is a symbol of Klal Yisrael and Galus, and the way Yaakov Avinu coped. So that gives us the strength to cope in Galus. And what do we see? It's exactly how the nations talk. Every time Jewish people came to a nation, the nation prospered because of the Jews. We know that as historical facts. But as soon as the Jews also started prospering, oh, no. Then they don't forgive us. Then they're, no. Then they're saying, oh, they took all the money. When one of the King Philips in France, when the many expulsions, they expelled Jews from England, they expelled Jews from France, and one of the Philips, as soon as when the Jews left, the economy of the nation, of the country, went downhill, and he begged Jews to come back. In Spain, when the Jews were expelled, the economy of Spain went downhill. It goes throughout history. When Jewish people are there, the nation prospers. The Jewish people are kicked out, the nation goes downhill. The Jewish people, the nation prospers, and when the Jewish people are there, the nation prospers, the country prospers, and the Jewish people also prosper. And that they don't like. And they start talking the way the sons of Lavan spoke. Yaakov took from our father, and all this wealth that he has, that's from our father. Yaakov sees that Lavan's face is now, he's not looking at him the way he looked at him yesterday or the day before. He sees him looking at him with a crooked nose. And then Hashem says to Yaakov, Shuv el eretz avosecha ve'yeh imach. Go back to Eretz Yisrael, and I will be with you. Okay? Yaakov calls Rachel and Leah to the field, and he was watching the sheep, and he says to them, I see that your father's attitude to me is not like it was. And Hashem spoke to me. And you know that I served your father. I really worked for him with all my koach. And he fooled me so many times. He changed my salary 100 times. Aseres monim is 10 times 10. And Hashem didn't let him do bad to me. And he goes on and he says, and he describes all the trials and tribulations in the house of Lavan. And then he says, and he told him, and Hashem said I should leave. Now this is very puzzling, because the Avos HaKadoshim and the Imahos, they lived for one thing, to do the will of Hashem. They didn't need any side benefits in order to want to do the will of Hashem. The Avos HaKadoshim were shleimim. So why this conversation is a little bit astonishing. He says, I see your father's not looking at me the way he used to. And he looks, that's not pleasant. And Hashem told me to leave. And then he goes into more detail. So why is he saying those side things? And not just that. Rachel and Leah answer him. Vatan Rachel v'Leah v'tomarna. Lo ha'od lanu chelek v'nachla b'veis avinu. Do we have to think of anything of the Yerusha? Halo nochlios nechshavnu lo. We're considered strangers to him. Kimacharanu, he sold us. And all. And now, whatever Hashem told you to do, you should do. They're also answering with a side benefit, a gashmistika benefit, to leave Lavan's house, and whatever Hashem whatever Hashem told you, do. So, Ramesh Feinstein talks about it. Why are they emphasizing the Gashmiistic reasons to leave the house of Lavan? And by the way, whatever Hashem told you to do, you should do. So we should really understand. Whatever the Avos and the Imos HaKadoshim did, they did it kulo l'shem shamayim. Why are they talking about the side things? Because they want to teach us that when you do the will of Hashem, it comes out good for your Olam Hazeh as well. They're teaching us a strategy against the Yetzer Hara, which Rabbi Yisrael Salanter used to quote, that there are two strategies to win over the Yetzer Hara. One is lahagdil hayira, to increase the yiras shamayim, to learn Musar. And the second one is lahaktin hanisayon, to minimize the test, to make the test easier. How do you make the test easier? You see that it's worthwhile being a Yid, even in Olam Hazeh. Even for Olam Hazeh, it's good. And I remember Rev Yankiv Galinsky. What a beautiful idea I heard from him. He said that he was giving a speech to Balei Tshuva in Bnei Brak. And the organizer of the speech, and a newspaper columnist came to interview the Balei Tshuva. And the organizer said after the speech, he hoped that maybe it would awaken him also, it would awaken this secular columnist. After the speech, he said to one of the Balei Tshuva, who, in your opinion, gets more Olam Haba? You or the children of Bnei Brak? Now, Rabbi Yankov Galinsky was sure that this man would say, that this Balei Tshuva would say, Chazal tell us, the Balei Tshuva are greater. B'makom shebalei tshuva omdim ein tzadikim gemurim yicholim la'amod. The place where balei tshuva stand, even tzadikim gemurim cannot stand on that place. So, on the same level. So he asked him, so what but that was not the answer he gave. That was not the answer that the Baal Tshuva gave. He said, I'm convinced that the children of Bnei Brak get more Olam Haba than me. But this is how the Baal Tshuva felt. He said, why? Because I've been on the other side. I know there's nothing there. I know it's all darkness and emptiness. Children of Bnei Brak, they see, looks like people have wealth, and it looks like they're traveling and having fun, and they think they might be missing something from Olam Hazeh, from Gashmias, and they stay in Bnei Brak, they get more schar than me. It's probably not true, because Chazal tell us that the place where Balei Tshuva stand, even Tzaddik and Gemurim can't stand. But this is how this Baal Tshuva felt. They think they're missing something from Olam Hazeh, but they stay. Okay, he says, I have no choice. I've been there. I know there's nothing there. So, okay, a little bit more about Reb Aaron Kotler. Last week I spoke about it, and now the yard site was just 3 days ago. Shabbos, Beis Kislev. So I'm going to tell you the story about Joe Banana. I don't think I mentioned it last week. There were 24 Bachrim, Yeshiva Bachrim, 24 B'nai Torah who were stuck in Italy. This was during World War II. They had escaped Germany, as far as I know, and they came to Italy. Now Mussolini, Yimach Shemo, was Hitler's good friend, two big Rishayim, and he didn't want to give them a visa. They weren't looking to stay in Italy. But he wanted to ship them right back into the hands of the murderers. And the Baron was told about it, and he said, so who should we talk to? Who could do something here? They told him, the head of the mafia. Because the mafia, this big mafia in Italy, and then also in the United States, and the police are afraid of them too. And the head of this mafia was, they called him Joe Banana, Joe Bonino. So Reb Aaron, and they said to Reb Aaron, but for sure the Rosh Yeshiva wouldn't want to talk to such a Russia. And the Rosh Yeshiva said, what do you mean? In order to save Yidden, I would even talk to the Pope, Yimach Shemo. In order to save Yidden, I would even talk to the Pope. So yes, let's go talk to Joe Bonino, Joe Banana, to the head of the mafia. So what was made up, what was planned, is that Reb Aaron is going to talk. Reb Aaron didn't know English. He's going to talk in Yiddish. Later on, he understood English already. When they were talking and learning, he understood. But okay, now it's the beginning. He doesn't understand. He doesn't know how to talk English. He's going to talk in his language, in Yiddish. Because when Reb Aaron talked, the words came from one heart and entered the next. Dvarim hayotzim and halev nechnasim al halev. So that was the plan. Reb Aaron's going to talk, and then the American Bacher who came with him is going to translate. Who is that? I heard from Yankov Eliezer Schwartzman Shlita, Reb Aaron's Einiko, that Reb Leib Hyman went with him to interpret. Now, Reb Leib Hyman, I never knew who it was until I heard it from Reb Yankov Eliezer Schwartzman Shlita. Reb Leib Hyman, I know who Reb Leib Hyman was. When I was growing up in Lakewood, they were there for many years, and his wife was my teacher. And yes, Aleim Shalom, yeah. So, the Shiva collected a lot of money. What talks to the head of the mafia if not money? So, yeah, he comes with the money, and he's talking about the suffering of the Yidden in Europe, and how our brothers and sisters are burning in the furnaces. And as he's in the middle of talking, Reb Leib Hyman wants to translate. So this Joe, head of the mafia, It tells him SHUTUP. It's not words that I like to pronounce with my mouth. And this is music to my ears. I want to hear the rabbi. You hear this? He didn't understand the word that Aaron was saying. Okay, so Aaron continued until he stopped. And then he tells Rabbi Leib Hyman, now translate and make it quick. I don't have time for you. So he told him what Rabbi Aaron wanted. That these 24 Bachrim B'nai Torah should be able to come to America. They should get visas. So Job, this head of the mafia, says, okay, how does the rabbi want them to come? By boat or by plane? So Rabbi Leib Hyman asked Rabbi Aaron. Rabbi Aaron said they should come by plane. Within 2 days, they were there. He said they'll be there in 2 days, and they were. But first, let me tell you, right by that meeting, Rabbi Aaron puts down the money. What else is going to talk to this mafia guy? Puts down the money on the table. A lot of money. You know, he's making sure he's not going to change his mind, you know. He says, I don't want your money. I don't need your money. I want a blessing from the rabbi. You hear this? I want a blessing from the rabbi. Now, what is Rabbi Aaron going to bless him with? You should be successful in all your endeavors? Oh, no. Rabbi Aaron said to him, he blesses him that he should die in his bed. That when it comes time for him to die, he should die in his bed. He was so happy with that, because usually the mafia people kill each other and they end up at the bottom of the Hudson River maybe, but he's going to die in his bed. Okay, years later, this man was sick, and Rabbi Aaron had already been nifter. And he asked friends, where's that rabbi? Where's that rabbi? He said already, he left this world already. Okay, but he has a son who's also a very righteous person, Schneier, that's how. And one day, a limousine arrives in Lakewood to Beis Medrash Gavoa, and they're looking for Reb Schneier. They come out with these dark glasses, and Reb Schneier said to them, I'm not so great like my father. I don't know how to give blessings. Finished. He got out of it, Baruch Hashem. Wasn't necessary to save B'nai Torah anymore. Because when Rabbi Aaron spoke, it entered the hearts. Reb Shaul Kagan, who wrote a beautiful article about Rabbi Aaron 10 years after Rabbi Aaron passed away, and that was in the Jewish Observer, and I saved it. And if anybody has a fax, I'd be happy to fax it to you. I'd really be happy to do that. So let me know. The article is a monumental article. It is so beautiful. When Reb Chaim Ozer Gudzinski met Rabbi Aaron when Rabbi Aaron was a young bacher, he said, someday half the world will rest on this boy's shoulders. And sure enough, the whole Jewish world was resting on his shoulders. Yeah, at one point, he was doing things for the Torah schools in Eretz Yisrael. He was collecting money for Chinuch Hatzmai, the Torah schools in Eretz Yisrael. And Rabbi Yankel Weisberg, the executive director of Lakewood, said to Rosh Yeshiva, they're about to close the electricity and the water in the yeshiva and the gas. And the yeshiva is collecting for Chinuch Hatzmai. So he said, gerecht, you're right, but what should I do? I cannot desert 40,000 children in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Aaron, yeah. Now, I want to tell you that by the Levaya of Rabbi Aaron, I knew this lady. I knew that she was Mechalelas Shabbos. She was standing pretty much right in front of me by the Levaya. The Levaya was first on Sunday in Lakewood, and then it was Sunday night in New York. And then Monday, they took him to Eretz Yisrael, and they had a big Levaya in Yerushalayim. So this lady was standing not far from me, and I see she's crying away. We were all crying. We were all sobbing. And I see she's crying, and I knew she was a Mechal Shabbos. And I'm thinking, what does she have to do with Rabbi Aaron? Like, why is she crying? Well, about 3 months later, I saw her again, and she was a complete Balas Tshuva. and this was reminiscent of what my father Olav Shalom told me, that by Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi's Levaya, a baskol from Shamayim came out. There was a heavenly voice that said that whoever was by the Levaya of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi is going to Olam Haba eventually, is going to be going to Mezuman L'chai Olam Haba. So my father explained to me how, it's not a hard thing to go to a Levaya. Yeah, I know it could be hard, but for that you earn Olam Haba. That whoever was by the Levaya of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi was so awakened, was so inspired that he had to become a Ben Olam Haba. And we felt that by Rabbi Aaron's Levaya. People who were far from Yiddishkeit were also crying. Yeah. Oh, and Sir Shaul Kagan wrote in that article that he knows a person who became a Shomer Shabbos just by seeing Reb Aaron. He didn't even get a chance to talk to him. He said, I saw your Rosh Hashiva, I observed his behavior, and I'm telling you, I became a Shomer Shabbos because of him. He didn't even say a word to me. Later on, people did say words, and Baruch Hashem, she covers it completely, and she's from, but she became Shomer Shabbos and Kashrus and Tznius. Okay, ladies. Lehish Tameya next week, Amitzvah Hashem, Kol Tov.